Have you ever walked into a room with a clear goal in mind and 2 seconds later, stood there thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Then you go back to where you came from, remember, go back to the room again, and guess what?
You forget again.
Or better yet, you go into the bathroom with your cell phone, start watching a video of an octopus opening a jar of mayonnaise, and before you know it, you've spent 25 minutes there without even peeing.
Classic.
If this sounds familiar, congratulations, you're not alone. This type of brain bug is practically a way of life for those with ADHD. And no, it's not just about distraction. Today we're going to talk about a specific phenomenon that often goes unnoticed, but that defines much of the mental roller coaster of those who live with the disorder, the hyperfocus cycle. You know that brilliant idea that suddenly appears, like a ray of creative enlightenment in the middle of nowhere? It could be at 3 in the morning, it could be in the shower, it could be in the middle of an unrelated meeting. Your mind lights up like a short-circuited Christmas tree. And then comes the part that seems like a superpower. You dive into it with an almost superhuman intensity. You spend hours or days, completely obsessed with that project, that research, that playlist, that foolproof plan to change your life in 48 hours. It seems like, finally, everything makes sense.
You are in control. You are the control. Until, puff.
The gas runs out. Your brain shuts down like an old printer. And along with that comes tiredness, frustration, guilt for not being able to keep up the same pace.
VHY don't I finish anything.
Why do I always get excited and then give up? And the cherry on top, swearing that next time it will be different, only to repeat everything the same way. This cycle of hyperfocus, from spark to mental breakdown, is more common than it seems. And today we are going to explore it together, with empathy, lightness and a few good laughs, because if we don't laugh, we cry and forget why we were crying along the way. Now that we've laughed or cried laughing at the absurdly familiar situations of ADHD, let's get serious, but not too much. Hyperfocus may seem, at first glance, like a gift from the universe. Imagine, while everyone else is struggling to concentrate, you dive into a project and become a machine of productivity, creativity, and excitement. You almost seem like a movie character who solves the entire plot in one sleepless night.
The problem is, this comes with a price.
Hyperfocus doesn't let you know when it arrives, and even worse, it doesn't let you know when it's going to leave. It catches you off guard, drags you into a mental tunnel where only that exists, and the rest of the world disappears. Suddenly, basic tasks like eating, sleeping, showering, or answering messages from people who love you become dispensable details. All of this is left aside in the name of that wonderful idea. We feel motivated, useful, important. It's finally working, right? But what no one sees, or almost no one says, is that this rhythm is not sustainable. And when the energy runs out, it doesn't go away politely. It collapses. That's when the cycle starts to take its toll. What was excitement becomes overload. What seemed like passion becomes obligation.
And the brain, tiret, simply freezes.
Like when you open 32 tabs in your browser thinking you're going to use them all and, suddenly, your computer starts making helicopter noises and freezes. You don't even know where you started.
You just feel like you failed, again.
That's the problem. Hyperfocus isn't just intensity, it's dysregulation. It's as if the ADHD brain has a very powerful accelerator, but a brake that takes a while to respond. We go all out, without measuring the fuel, and then we beat ourselves up for not being able to keep the car running on empty. And of course, then comes the guilt, the judgment from others and from ourselves, the self-esteem slips, and there you have it, the combo is complete. But hey, it's not drama, it's not exaggeration, and it's definitely not laziness.
It's the way our brain works.
And understanding this is not an excuse, it's a starting point. Because when you understand what's happening, you start to realize that it's not just a lack of discipline or a habit of giving up halfway.
It's a pattern. A cycle.
And it has a name, an explanation, and, the best part, it can be faced more easily when you learn to recognize it. Okay, but what happens in this brain that acts as if it had drunk 3 cups of coffee and forgotten to turn off the engine? Why can someone with ADHD spend hours without getting up from their chair working on a random project, but completely freeze when it's time to answer a 2-line email? The answer lies in something called self-regulation. To explain it in a completely academic way, the neurotypical brain, i.e. the average standard, has a system that helps it manage what is a priority, what is urgent, what gives pleasure, and what needs to be done even if it is boring. It's as if it had an internal manager organizing the day's tasks. Now we study, then we eat, then we rest. But the brain with ADHD doesn't have a manager. It has a random DJ who plays whatever it wants, whenever it wants. Sometimes it's calm music to organize the schedule. Sometimes it's heavy metal at 3 in the morning because you remembered that you don't know how an airplane engine works and you need to know now. And this internal soundtrack is strongly influenced by dopamine, which is like the fuel of motivation. For people with ADHD, dopamine is a bit temperamental. New, exciting things or things that give a peak of reward make it jump, and then comes hyperfocus. But predictable, boring, or bureaucratic things, well, it's like trying to light a wet barbecue with an old match. It won't work. Or, at the very least, it'll be too much work. That's why a person with ADHD can wash the entire house at dawn because they had the idea of rearranging the furniture, but then spend a week stuck trying to schedule a simple exam. It's not bad will. It's just that the brain literally has more difficulty starting and sustaining tasks that don't provide that immediate burst of interest. A study compared the brain functioning of people with and without ADHD and showed that, in situations of boredom or repetition, the brain with ADHD behaves like a computer running a heavy game on a dial-up connection. Slowness, crashes, the urge to throw everything out the window. But when you find something that activates your reward system, like a brilliant idea or an exciting project, it goes into overdrive. It's turbocharged productivity.
For a while.
The problem is that this turbo mode doesn't come with a pause button. So you ignore sleep, hunger, back pain, thirst, missed calls, and keep going until you break down.
Literally. Your body takes its toll. Your mind takes its toll.
And when the dopamine spike drops, what's left is exhaustion, frustration, and that feeling of, how did I manage to do so much in such a short amount of time and now I can't even get out of bed? It's as if hyperfocus were an unregulated superpower, incredible at times, destructive at others. And like every superpower, it needs a user manual. Spoiler, this manual starts with self-knowledge and continues with a lot of support. But before we get to the solutions, it's worth looking at the multiple forms this cycle can take. Because, spoiler 2, it's not the same for everyone. If you've come this far thinking, wow, I'm just like that, then yes, that could be your ADHD brain. But it could also be one of the ways it manifests itself. Because, although the hyperfocus script seems repetitive, the movie changes from person to person. Some people enter the cycle with creative projects. They start writing a book, create a cooking channel, decide to make scented candles and sell them online. The excitement is real, the execution is intense, until the interest suddenly evaporates, like smoke. And then the candles sit there, all half-finished, staring silently at the shelf in judgment. Others enter hyperfocus mode with completely random things. Like, learning everything about Norse mythology in a weekend. Or understanding in detail how artisanal cheese is made in the French countryside. And nothing against that. The problem appears when the person gets lost in this immersion and forgets that they had commitments with the real world, like handing in a paper, paying a bill, or taking a shower. And there's also the less talked about side of hyperfocus, the one that focuses on less brilliant, but equally intense things. People who get into a loop of scrolling through social media for hours without realizing it, or who obsessively review a task thinking it's never good enough. Hyperfocus isn't just about creative productivity. Sometimes it's about sinking into a detail that no one asked for, but that your brain has decided is now the only important thing in the universe. The most interesting and frustrating thing is that this cycle isn't always visible from the outside. Sometimes those around you only see the beginning, when you're going crazy, super excited, and then the end, when you're exhausted and frustrated. The middle, which is the tunnel where everything happens, tends to be very lonely. And this makes the person seem fickle, lazy, or impulsive. When, in reality, they're stuck in an invisible script that their own brain wrote. But look, understanding these differences is liberating. Because it helps take the blame out of the equation. Not everyone with ADHD experiences hyperfocus in the same way. And not every abandoned idea is a failure. Sometimes, it's just a brain trying to deal with its own chaotic way of functioning, and doing the best it can with the tools it has. And between us, living with your brain always in everything now or never nothing mode is tiring, yes. But it can also be funny. It can yield stories. It can even become a learning experience, as long as we can stop for a minute, breathe, and laugh a little at the shared insanity of trying to function with this kind of mind. If there's one thing ADHD teaches you, the hard way, it's that the path between enthusiasm and exhaustion can be very short. Sometimes, it all starts with an idea that makes your eyes sparkle, and ends with you on the couch, surrounded by dirty socks, missed deadlines, and the eternal question, how did this get so out of control?
But hey, you're not broken. You're not weak. Jure not lazy.
You just have a brain that works in a different way. And understanding that different way is already a huge step. The hyperfocus cycle may seem like a villain at times, but it also reveals something beautiful, the ability to fall in love with ideas, to dive deep into interests, to create with intensity. It's just that no one taught us how to come out the other side without drowning in our own impulse. Maybe the secret is not to try to fit into a mold that was never made for you, but to learn to design a new mold, one that's more flexible, kinder, with scheduled breaks and realistic expectations. It's okay to get excited.
It's okay to slow down.
It's okay to leave things half done every now and then. Not every process has to end in applause. Sometimes, just getting out of bed and having breakfast is already an Oscar-worthy victory. And when that "I can't keep anything up" feeling hits, try to remember, living with ADHD is like trying to tame a hurricane with a teaspoon. It's not easy, but you've made it this far. You've survived 1,000 cycles of excitement and collapse. You've learned, you've fallen, you've laughed, you've cried, you've come up with crazy plans at 2 a.m. That doesn't make you less capable, it makes you human.
So take care of yourself. Take it easy.
And when the next hyperfocus comes along, take a deep breath, set a timer, drink some water, and enjoy the roller coaster with your seatbelt fastened. You're not alone in this craziness. And believe me, it's okay to be too intense, a little lost, and completely in love with 1,000 things at the same time. There's beauty in this chaos too.